Hey quilting friends, I would love to cover with all of you today yet another very basic quilting block or unit, but it's used in so many places. That's right, it's the flying geese. Are you ready? Let's get stitching. Well, welcome back everybody to Sew Well with Rob Appell here at Stitchin Heaven on YouTube. I am your host, Rob Appell, and super blessed to see all of you on the other side of the camera for what will hopefully be a super simple quilting lesson where, that's right, we cover what we call the flying geese unit. And there are three pretty simple ways to get there. I'm gonna walk you through three of them. There probably are even more ways to get there because it's quilting, and like cats, there's a lot of ways we can skin this same project, but I wanna be covering some real easy, some real basics. These are skill building style videos that I think we can all learn a little bit from. And so at any rate, this is what is a flying geese unit, traditionally a rectangle with two triangles on the side. If you look real close in this one, I actually have a seam in the middle. So that's where we're going to start on today's lesson, by using what are actually called half square triangles to build this. And then I'll also show you a rectangle, and then we'll end today with the magic flying geese. I'm using some of the scrap fabrics from my Super 60 sampler quilt project. We have kits for them now, and I just thought it'd be really fun. But I'll tell you right now, as we get towards the magic flying geese, there are several charts out there, but they're not all accurate. And so I actually ran out of my fabric today in creating the samples for the video. So we'll end with a word of caution today on testing, and maybe not with the fabric you really intended to use for your quilting tutorials or your quilting projects. Anyways, I'm goofing around. Let's get started here using half square triangles. And we're gonna back up for those of you who have never made half square triangles. And today I'm going to use a technique where we're going to go ahead and get two of the half square triangle units from these two squares. Oh, and by the way, folks, so that we can keep playing with our fun gradient over here and I can keep building these into something else, all of our methods are going to yield the same finish. And let's call this a raw goose today. This is an uncooked goose. So it is 3.5 by 6.5 raw, would finish, I guess, at 3 by 6. So to start now with this technique, these two squares, so I have my solid, which becomes the goose, and I actually have my print, so they're right sides together here, and I've drawn a diagonal. Now these squares to start, because of diagonal quilting math, they're 3 7/8. So start with me there, 3 7/8 squares. And now what we're going to do, we're going to go to the 1/4 inch seam allowance here, and I'm going to stitch on either sides right now. So that chalk mark is actually a guideline, not a stitching line. And I'm going to sew down one side, and I'll go ahead and cut threads because I've got a nice thread cutter on this handy Quilter 510 that makes life easy. And then I'm going to go to the other side. So I just rotated. I'm on the other side of the line now, and we're going to go ahead and stitch down. And I'm just going to run that through real simple and easy. Okay, and now as I come on over here, and we're going to talk about a couple of different tools, and this is just to help you learn how to use them. Again, you can get away with just about anything, including you could free cut this, but to protect our hands, I'm going to go ahead and use a ruler that is larger than, and I'm just going to cut now on that chalk line, okay? So I've separated these. This makes the two half square triangles, but we need them to finish at 3.5 inches wide square. So this is where I like to use something like a clearly perfect slotted trimmer. And there is, probably easier to see right here instead of on the blue fabric, but there is a line, and that dotted line is going to go on my threads. And I'm going to lay it right here, covering those white threads. Oh, moving all around today. Sorry, folks. And what I'm looking to do now is center my fabric within my tool so I can trim, and I can trim here, and then I can also rotate so that I can use the slots in the slotted trimmer to remove the dog ears. And if you don't like cutting into templates because it might dull your blade, question for another day. There is a really cool tip on the edge where you could have just used this tip to dog ear as well. And actually that's the method I am now really preferring to use. Plus I use this tool for a lot of different things. Let's just go ahead and quickly trim this one down. And the reason I'm pointing this out now is with slotted trimmers, you actually do your trimming before you do your pressing. So of techniques and tools, I like the slotted trimmer a lot. When it comes to making my flying geese units, however, this is not my favorite method for making the full flying goose. I have another method that I feel is a little more accurate, which we'll get to here in a second, but let's finish this one because I'm caffeinated and jumping ahead. Always a great idea to choose a direction to press to. So I'm going to press to the prints today. You've heard us say press to the dark sides. That's just to help with our bleed through. But right now, I'm just going ahead and setting this up. And then because the goose of the unit is actually the center, right? So you could have done gradient flying geese. I chose to do bold colors here so that this really works nicely and it plays in so that you can see the darkness of the flying geese here. But at any rate, as we're building these here, you want to make sure that you build this as a point, and we've gone ahead and pressed away from those, so that makes that nice and easy now. I'm going to lay these over, and we're going to do a 1/4 inch seam along that side. And if you're like my friend Tiffany, you might actually take a moment and press these seams open with using a clapper, making it even more efficient for later on in your stitching. I'm not going to do that, however, because I want to jump onto the next style of flying geese, right? So I just press to one side, either side won't really matter. And there we have a 3.5 by 6.5 finish because we ended up with two 3.5 inch raw flying half inch, what are these called? Half square triangles. My gosh, there's a lot of quilting conversation going on. So these will fit right back in on our design wall. That's the right size we need to use as we're building our flying geese. And I like those, especially when I've been doing other projects that require a trim down method. Actually, kind of what I'm going to show you next, where we end up with these extra parts and pieces that I have in my stash and I want to do something with. So I don't often build flying geese with half square triangles, but I build a lot of quilts with half square triangles. So I do keep them around, and this will work for this method. But what I really want to show you is my favorite. This one I think is the most accurate of the three. And it's going to be starting with a rectangle. And the rectangle is going to be the size we want our finished raw unit. So again, 3.5 by 6.5 this way. You're going to need 2 squares, and those 2 squares are each going to get diagonals. I think you know where I'm going with this, right? Now these squares need to fit on our rectangles, so they're also 3.5s. Yes, there will be an overlap here, and I'm going to walk you through the steps, and these steps really need to be done in this order so that you get a really clean finish and an easy sewing as we get started in here. So again, I'm going to start with one of my squares already marked on the diagonal, and we're going to head into the sewing machine now. Now, this is actually a stitch line. We're going to sew on the chalk line this time, not using it as a guide. Dropping it in, you can see the chalk running right through the foot. That's where my eye is there. And I'm just going to go ahead and watch this go on through the machine. Nice and easy. And we'll cut our threads. Now, as I come off of the machine, our next step is we're gonna go ahead and trim off the excess. So if you are like me and you hate to throw anything away, don't forget this part over here could actually become a new half square triangle. So you may want to take a moment and stitch another 1/4 inch over so that that's already set, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. I actually love this slotted trimmer because it's a nice long ruler, and you see this gray line? That is also my 1/4 inch seam. So I'm going to use this because it's handy, and I'm going to cut this off first, and then we're going to press. And now we're going to press, and we press over into what would be the triangle shape or the square fabric we just put on. so that we now have one piece like this. And again, set these aside, or if you want, you can run them through, press them open, trim them down, and you will have half square triangles. But again, they're smaller, so they might be used around in the stashings or something, but they're not in this project. Now here's the key elements, folks. We're going to take and put our next ones, remembering right sides together, right sides down, and I'm first matching up outside 3 edges here, so that, and my diagonal is forming that same triangle or that same goose that we're building. And I like to sew from my corners out to where the tips of the design meet. Same thing, sewing along the chalk. And before we press, we are again going to trim. And you could freestyle cut that, but it's just safer to do it with a template or tool, ruler, to keep your hand safe. Again, pressing away from the center rectangle, away from the goose, into this rectangle here. And you can see, folks, pretty dang accurate. So again, this was one of the half square triangle versions, and when that presses down, that is exactly the same size. So as a quick reminder, this started with 2 squares that were 3 7/8 because of the triangle quilting math. This started with a rectangle 3.5 by 6.5, the actual size we wanted, because we really just used that as our foundation, is probably the best word, and we stitched on through the chalk lines and had that seam allowance. So that's why that works so easily. The math is super, super easy, and I believe this is the most accurate, so I don't want to discourage you from the magic version I'm going to teach you, but I like this method the best. However, magic is magic, and that's always fun. So let's dive into that. And this is where I said I ran into some serious hot water, folks. I pulled up 3 different charts. Every chart told me it was going to end up with a 3.5 by 6.5. And look at this. I have, that ain't right, man. That just, it's bigger, isn't it? Right? That ain't right. And that was the medium. I ended up, even wanted to use a square that was 8.5, and that's where I lost most of the leftover fabric I'm so disappointed about. So if you're using a chart for any other size than what I'm about to tell you, because now I have actually checked and double checked and triple checked what I'm going to say, use a couple of dummy pieces of fabric. Well, that's not nice to the fabric. Use some ugly fabric. We won't call it dumb, we'll just call it ugly. Use some ugly fabric, a couple of different colors, and make sure that your sizes are dialed in so that then you can go into Henry Ford style quilt making and mass produce these. But yeah, the charts I looked at on the internet were not correct. One got me close, but not quite close enough. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start to get a magic version where we're going to get 4 flying geese out of 1 big square and 4 small squares. The big square starts at 7 by 7, okay? And these 4 small squares are, I'm just double even checking my notes, I don't want to get this wrong, 3 3/4. And what threw me off is you can see how many attempts I even had to make and trim down. Literally, folks, these are the last 4 units I have. So we're going to do this together, and we're going to do this gingerly. But I'm afraid my diagrams are going to be a little bit wonky. So here, let's use these 2 to begin with. What we're really looking for is on our big square, we also had those same diagonals. Those diagonals are going to be guide lines, so we're going to sew on both sides. And I've drawn from corner to corner, and I'm going to set one of my small 3 3/4 squares on the big 7-inch square. And please just look past this other line over here. Now you can see how this straight guide line goes all the way through. And folks, you don't see me use these tools very often here at So Well, but I am going to stick a pin through, especially the top layer. And I'm going to do the bottom layer on our first one. I will tell you, after you get more proficient with this, generally what I will do is I will drop the first one and then drop the second one while I'm sewing. But this is the best way to teach it. So let's do good learning today, doing what I'm saying, not what I'm normally doing. Now we're not going to sew through pins either. We never do that at So Well. So again, as a guideline with a 1/4 inch, I'm coming through. And it's because this 1/4 inch distance could be a little different that this loses its accuracy a bit. I'm going to engage needle down, I'm going to remove the pin, and I'm going to keep on stitching. And then this is the other place where it can get a little bit less than accurate, where you come on to the second small square. If that's puckered or rippled, your pin was not set correctly, that could get offset a bit. Not a terrible situation, but you're going to go ahead and sew all the way to the end there. Cut your threads, and now we have one line of stitching, 1/4 inch from our center chalk line. We're going to rotate and do the exact same thing, kind of like when we were making those half square triangles earlier. Let's go ahead and just rip through this here pretty quick. And now that that first layer of thread is down, generally that little corner is no problem. We're just going to stitch it down as well. Easy peasy. And now that both of those layers are stitching are made, you're going to use a ruler that is bigger than your fabric, and we're going to cut that chalk line. So that's our next step. We've got to separate these units because we're still building as we go. Now we're going to come over here and we're going to make little raccoon heads, which I think are great. We're going to press up into the smaller squares. And see how that kind of looks like a little raccoon head? I love that. I just love that. Okay, let me get this other one set too, so when we're done. And folks, these are going to be pretty accurate. I don't want to discredit whoever came up with this technique. I think this is awesome, and you see this taught a lot, especially in some patterns where you want to make a bunch of these at once. And so it is important that you understand this, and I will admit the first time I checked out some of the diagrams on this, I didn't quite get it. I actually had to stitch it following the instructions. It just didn't make mental sense to me. Okay, so now we have one raccoon head. We're going to do the same to both. And let me go ahead and bring this square. Again, this is the proper diagonal. This was an error that got trimmed down using my fabric upright. So again, I just want to point out I'm going to run that diagonal line straight up through, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to stitch on both sides. So again, I like to go ahead and start up here on this tip. We're going to come on down here. And we're just going to sew all the way off the fabric there. You know, come right off on your foot, no problem. And then now, because I've done that side, I feel comfortable to rotate, starting up at the top and stitching down. Just caught my bobbin thread, no big deal there. When I hit the thread cutter, it'll all come free, as I said, easy. And again, we're just going to go ahead, grab a tool that is bigger than necessary, slide it through here, and then as we come to our pressing mat, pressing these again up into the triangles, and you'll find, see, maybe if I put it right there, you can see we still have a bit of trimming to do, right? But here were the ones we were making, so we're pretty spot on, okay? So not too shabby. Now let's take a second real quick before we end today's video though and talk about some of the other really cool things, because yes, it is a flying goose project, but there are so many things, like I said, that you can really do with this unit. The tradition is to go like you see behind me and actually build, and I love these gradient styles. Sometimes folks will even take these and they'll build them like, let's see if I can do this for us here, where they kind of put them in more of a wedge fashion, creating an arc. And a curve as they stitch, and then they'll go ahead and build in their side panel. So there's a lot you can do with this. But you'll also notice, even if like you looked at our New Year's Eve quilt we did this year, there were certain pieces of construction where we used 2 half square triangles to come up with this unit, but it would have been easier if we did this. So for example, and I'm just going to spin a couple of these, of course you could do your now square on point by creating these. It's a very quick way of doing it. The nice thing is if you were to come back in and start to match up these sides out here, right, and just drop in a solid square, you can see that you can make some pretty fun and easy star blocks. Again, and it would omit the need for so many of the actual half square triangles being made because you've made them with the rectangles and using simple math. Remember, we didn't have 7/8 and things cut that way. So you can do several different orientations with these. So when you're looking at your quilt blocks that you want to start to create and looking at your patterns, or especially if you're creating your own pattern, I'm just going to encourage you to dive a little deeper visually and see if you can do the small construction pieces bigger. For example, taking your 2 half square triangles and converting them into a flying goose so that you can do a lot more with them. And as again, the most traditional layout, and that 1/4 inch gets just covered up with the seam, is to go ahead and sew them all together in a straight line. seam, seam, seam this way. And then to really accent your geese, you would put in the same color fabric. And I would have if I wouldn't have cut myself short. Sorry again, folks, right? But you could put in that same color fabric along the sides there. Or you could put in an alternating, and again, I know I just want to keep playing. I just really want to keep playing. I mean, look, you could do some fun houndstooth looking blocks and all kinds of different stuff. So like I said, it's just a super easy element, especially if you're working with ingredients of color, that it's easy to control, easy to build, and easy to play with. So hopefully you've learned something awesome here today. 3 different ways to construct the flying goose block. 1 with the half square triangles. Secondly, my favorite, with the rectangle and 2 squares, or at the end where you get 4, the magic flying geese style. Just watch those yardage charts on the internet. They are not all as accurate as I think today's video was. And with that said, folks, please let me know in the comments below what kind of block would you like to learn next. This was requested by several of you. So what kind of simple quilting element can I help share with you all, help break down, make it more simple and easy. And we've also got some really big elaborate quilt projects coming at you real soon. So until I see you again, please stay well. Thanks for being here. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. It really helps support our channel. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Hit the little button to be notified every time we go live or do a new video for all of you. And here's one from the past I think you'll really enjoy.